Hello and welcome to that shooting show. This might be one of the most special shooting shows ever. My name is Steve Anderson. I am your humble host. And Lanny, that's humble as it relates to ego, not self-image, which we'll talk about in a minute. And I am here with a man I am pleased to call a friend and a mentor, Mr. Lanny Bassham from Mental Management Systems. Hey, Lanny, how are you?
I'm all right. How about you?
I got to tell you, Lanny, I am riding a wave of positivity that is actually encouraging houseplants to grow. I I have achieved a state of being that is actually good for houseplants.
Uh,
Um, as you may know, I've come through kind of a difficult time in my life, and I've come out on the other side largely through mental management. Just the best Steve Anderson I have ever been, and I want to thank you for that, along with everything else.
Good. You're
How are
welcome.
things? How are things for you?
Well, everything's going fine. Everything's going fine for an old guy.
That's right. That's right. So, the first question I have for you is something that so many people misunderstand, and that is the difference between self image and ego. I'd love to hear you talk about that.
Well, self-image is your attitude about how you fit into the world. Um, it's uh, it's an opinion that you have. Am I attractive to other people? Am I smart in math? And am I a good shooter? Am I better than this other guy? It's your opinion, and it's the result of that opinion affects your attitude and your habits. So
Mhm.
if you think you're good at something and you think you're like something, you're probably attracted to it and gonna seek to do it and do it well. But if you kind of feel like that you don't fit in, that's why I was not a successful athlete. Kind of slow, short, and uncoordinated when I was a young guy, and nobody kind of wanted a slow, short, and coordinated guy on their team. So I had to find something that I could do. And they didn't run me off on the rifle range, so I stayed there.
Now, do you believe you had some natural aptitude for rifle shooting, or was it just because you could sit still?
No, I don't think I had any natural aptitude for it. I think I may have had, whether it's genetic uh, or environmental, I really don't know, but somehow I um, had the ability to do things that I was persistent, and I was kind of the work ethic was instilled in me by my parents, and that helped a lot.
Yeah, persistence can get you very far. And we see, and I know you see this in other sports, we see that training can get virtually anybody to the middle of the pack, but self image is required to go from the middle to the top.
That's right. I think that I think self-image is the difference between good and great.
Mm-hmm.
You get to a certain point, and there's no question that uh, passion. People talk about being interested in something, being committed to it. That's a stronger attachment to what you're doing than just being interested in it. I mean, I'm interested in shotgun shooting, but I'm not committed to it.
Mm-hmm.
Committed, when people are committed, they're competing. They're
Right.
they're they they train and they take lessons and so forth. Um, and there's a level beyond that, and that's the people that are passionate about it. Um, they You can tell the difference between a person that's passionate, um, is it's just like in Malcolm Gladwell's book, Outliers. He talks about the 10,000 hour rule
Hmm.
and says if you want to be good at something, do it for 5,000 hours. You'll get good at it. And people will say that you're good at that, but you give it 10,000 hours, as long as you had good instruction, uh, and you're going to be great at it. And but I don't think anybody's going to do anything for 10,000 hours if they're not passionate about it.
Right.
And
So
I don't think passion is something that you can learn necessarily or can teach. I think that people have a passion. It's kind of like falling in love as a teenager. You you fall in love with some girl and you're you're passionate about that for a while and then she goes out with somebody else and you're passionate about something else, music or something else or sport or um, your job or whatever. If you're fortunate enough to do have a vocation about something that you're passionate about, that's then it's not work. You're having fun all the time while you're working your job.
now that brings us to the things that you and I have in common, because that's the first one, right? We are so blessed by the Lord to get to earn a living doing something that we are passionate about. So it doesn't even feel like work most of the time.
It's my joy to do this, and
Right.
uh, I would have majored in it in college if they'd let me do it, but
Right.
but it's interesting to me that you ask anybody that's good at anything, sport or whatever. Of course, I work a lot with athletes or competitors, and as you do. And you ask them what percentage of what you do is mental, you're going to get a big number back. And the number I get most often is my sport's 90% mental. Well, if that's true, and I think it is, uh, how come we never had a course in college on on how to think? I mean, if it's 90% of the deal, I mean, you can get a degree in almost anything in school.
Mm-hmm.
But now philosophy is not the same thing as studying what to think about when winning.
Right.
Uh, and so it's but the what the winners are doing and what their winners are thinking, you got to learn that someplace else other than college.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. When I always set up that question, I say the first thing I get them to do is tell me their annual shooting budget if their spouse isn't in the room.
Yeah,
I'll say, hey, just give me a rough estimate of your annual budget. Don't worry, your wife is not listening.
yeah.
And it's usually a number around $10,000, right? And then I say, okay, what percentage of the sport is mental?
Mhm,
And they don't see my response coming. So I say, okay, are you going to give me $9,000 to solve your biggest problem? And they say, absolutely not.
mhm.
And I said, great. It doesn't take 90% of your budget, but it does take some more of your time, right? And that brings me to the journal, which is what I really want to talk to you about today.
All right.
Okay. When you certified me to teach mental management, I did not understand the power of the journal because I wasn't competing at that time. Okay. And so I'm teaching the journal and I'm doing a very good job listing the reasons why. And then I said, I need to try this in my own life. So I went out to the range because I didn't know I could do it away from my sport. I had to learn that. So I went out to the range with a gun I hadn't shot in a very long time. And with a cold performance, I had a master class score on a very challenging classifier. So I said, this is the greatest time to write in my journal. So I wrote, today, I shot a high master class score on a challenging classifier as a cold run. And I underlined it and I exclamation pointed it. And to this day, When I think about that particular gun, I remember that performance. And this is the biggest pushback I get with people not wanting to write down literally a book about their best shooting and how to duplicate it. So, who did you learn the power of the journal from? Did you get that from one of your gold medalists you interviewed?
I, um, well, I'm not saying that that one of the gold medalists that I interviewed, I really don't know where I got imprinting from. Uh, I but I'm convinced that your self-image is dynamic. It grows and shrinks based on imprinting. And you can get imprinting a lot of different ways. What you actually do is an imprint. If you have a successful run, it imprints, oh, I'm good at this. And if you have a not successful run, I'm frustrated about this, or I'm not so good at this. And that's what you actually do. You're also affected by who you're around. If you're around better shooters than you are, then your game tends to improve a little bit.
Mhm.
Uh, if you're around, if all your friends are jerks, you're probably jerk too. Whatever you're around, you tend to become. And well, I kind of that kind of made sense to me. But what I didn't know was every time you think about, talk about, or write about uh, something, that you improve the probability that that thing is going to become like you to do. Now, I'll tell you how I found that out. I'd been at the Army Marksmanship Unit for a couple of years. I have managed to get in the top four, which is kind of important because we had shot four-person teams back then. And if you, and the United States dominated Olympic rifle shooting at the time. And if you were in the top four, you were a member of, I mean, this is like being in you're in the best team in the world. And so I got to shoot with these guys, but I wasn't beating them. And as a matter of fact, I wasn't winning anything. I didn't win anything the first couple of years on the marksmanship unit team that of significance. No national championships, no medals, individual medals in international competition, things like that. And I was getting better all the time, but so were they. And all of them had world championship titles, world records, and Olympic medals. But here I'm bringing up the rear here. I got tired of it, and I would talk to my teammates, my coaches. I'd talk to my coaches and say, "Well, why am I not winning?" And they would always say the same thing. Well, your time's coming. Just shoot more, go to compete more, get more experience, then it's gonna finally get here. Well, after about 3 years, I was super frustrated. I think something's missing. And that's when I really started to do some analysis of what, why am I not winning? And so one of the things that I figured out was that my tournament scores were lower than my training scores. And but my prone and standing stages, excuse me, my prone and kneeling stages were good enough to win tournaments. They were on par with my teammates. It was standing where uh, they beat me, and I had as many tens in a 40 shot string. That's what we shot, 40 shots, and but I had more eights than they did. had more bad shots. And so I decided that, well, I got to get rid of these eights. You know, if I can eliminate the eights, I could be competitive. And so I came up with this great idea that every time I shot an eight, I would write down what I was doing wrong to try to see if there was some kind of pattern to this. And so I did that for 2 weeks. What do you think happened to my eight count?
Lanny, before I answer that question, I have got to tell you that I tell this story at on every range I go to teach a class, every mental management that I go to, every mental management class I teach, and every time I have a private consultation with a shooter with a poor self-image, I know exactly what happened. You became an expert in shooting eights and you
That's
shot more of them.
right. My eight count went up and I became really good at being bad, you know. So, but that's the first time it ever dawned on me that what I thought about and what I imprinted changed
Mhm.
my future, affected my future. And so I guess I just kind of, as a result of a careful observation of what was happening to me, I came up with the idea of imprinting, and I know that I never was told this by anybody else, and certainly not in school or not
Right.
in by my coaches or by the shooters that I was around, um, and so I now it wasn't until um, that happened that I realized the power of writing something down. That it makes sense to me that every time you think about something, it creates an imprint. Every time you talk about something, maybe the imprint of talking about something instead of thinking about something is stronger. But for sure, the imprint of what you write is a lot stronger than what you think about or talk about. So I became interested in seeing just how far would this take me. And it's not just that you're writing something down, it's what you're writing down and uh, and why you're doing it. You know, the reason why people resist uh, uh, keeping a journal is that they're not sold on the benefit
Mhm.
of the journal. And unfortunately, if you never try this, you will not get any benefit at all. But um, if you do it correctly and you do it for, I don't know, give me 4 weeks of keeping a journal every time you shoot.
Mhm.
And tell me that you don't see any improvement. If you don't, you're not doing it right.
Right.
You're not doing it correctly because
And
it's absolutely impossible for you to have those imprints if they're done correctly. That
right.
you won't your self-image won't change.
Mhm.
That's you'll be better at correcting mistakes. You'll be better at reinforcing good shots and good runs and good performances. You'll improve your attitude about shooting, and it's I think that people who doesn't like homework, I don't know anybody that except Sheldon Cooper that likes homework.
Right.
But but it's not homework. If you do it correctly, it is a way to imprint what you're correcting and imprint what you did well. And if you do it the way we teach it, and here's another benefit that's not often talked about. I have known and worked with Todd Bender for about 20 years now. And Todd, for those of you that might not know who he is, has more world championships in American skeet than anybody alive. And he's he's set records that have never nobody's ever done what he's done in his sport. He's kind of like the greatest of all time, and he or like put it this way, he's on the short list for the greatest of all time. That way, and uh, but when I first started working with him, he was already a gun god, and but he uh, he often says this at our clinics that we do together. He tells our students, he says, when I first saw Basham's program, I liked pieces of it, but I was decided there's two things I'm not going to do. I'm not going to reload, and I'm not going to keep the journal. Now, those two things are self-image issues.
Correct.
No, they change self-image. And I thought I was cock of the walk, you know. I mean, I, I thought my ego got in the way. And I thought, well, I don't have a self-image issue. I'm world champion, man, you know. And he says, but I did have a self-image issue. And uh, and those two things are the most important part of the system. That's what he'll say, because the reload, the self-image tends to grow or to be more affected. Uh, it's the self-image is affected at a greater intensity close to the action. So the first conversation that you hear after you finish a task is precious because it imprints stronger on your self-image than a conversation that you would have a day later or an hour later. And so whatever you're thinking about and talking about and writing about right after you finish, that's when the self-image is most impressionable and where it's wide open for imprinting. And that's when we keep our journal. We keep it at the end of a shooting day where we're close to the action. And what convinced Bender is I asked him this question. I said, what's the best you've ever done in a competition? And he says, well, way back before I started working with you, I was the first person to shoot a 550 at the World Championships. Now, what that means to those of us that don't know, that's breaking all the targets. There's 550 targets in that stage of competition. And he says, I was the first person to do it twice, you know, 2 years in a row. They have the World Championships every year in that sport. And he said that was the best time. And I said, well, what were you thinking about right after you did that? And he said, well, I don't really know. And I says, wouldn't you like to have a written record of what of what you learned and what you did well uh, at that shoot? And he says, yeah, I would like to have that. I said, well, you keep a journal, you would have that. And that was the thing that turned him on to at least trying it out. What I've tried to get people to do is do it one time. Can you do it once? Once you've done it one time, you can start feeling, oh, this isn't that hard. And then if you give it a week, where let's say you shoot 3 or 4 days a week, and if you do it 3 or 4 times in a week, uh, you'll have a, a greater appreciation for what it can do. And then if you stay with it for a month, as a matter of fact, I've never met somebody that's done it for 6 months that's not still doing it. And if they're still competing, you're still doing it. And a lot of people do it as a result of well, I'm not competing, but I'm going to do it just to build my own self-image every day. And that's not a bad idea either.
Yeah, I've begun doing it for, as I told you in our conversation a couple days ago, I've begun competing again in Steel Challenge,
Mm.
and I won my first match with 0 live fire, 0 dry fire. Oh, sorry, only dry fire, but I was keeping a journal of my dry fire sessions. And on the way to my second match, I had my roommate's girlfriend read to me the following. Okay. This was from my last dry fire session for the match. And I had her really emphasize her hillbilly accent to make it really dramatic. Okay. So she's in the back of my truck and she reads to me my own words. She says, today I shot 99% clean runs in match conditions. My process is codified and bulletproof. Today, my draws were fast, effortless, and precise. Rimfire presentations are quick and accurate with a quiet eye stare. Today, my mental reps contributed to my speed as I relaxed my hands and arms with right arm at 90 degrees. Perfect.
Mhm.
And that was the last thing I was thinking about before we pulled up to the match.
Yeah,
How great my last practice was.
yeah.
So powerful. And I've begun keeping track of when things go well in relationships. I write down, oh, today I did this thing and I got a good result. I should probably do more of that. Right.
You would think. Well, what's interesting is that people sometimes mistake a diary
Right.
as to being the same thing as a performance journal.
Mm-hmm.
It's not. A diary is where you record what happened to you. You record when all the things that happened, good and bad, and how depressed you were, or how mad you were, or whatever else, and those kind of imprints would cause you to be more depressed and more angry in the future. Those are strong imprints. So a performance journal is where you focus on, and you're kind of restricted to staying positive and talking about uh, what we have learned uh, as we've been doing this a long time, that there are a couple of tips that you can, if you'll put this in your journal keeping, it will improve the effectiveness of the journal. The first one is that the most important portion of the journal is the page. It's kind of the biggest section of our journal. It's what I did well today. And the best way to keep this is to determine 3 things that you did well today and create a paragraph for each one of those 3 and leave a blank line in between them so it's easy for you to see that you've done 3. And they should be at least 2 sentences. A paragraph should be at least 2 sentences. The first sentence describes what you did well. The second sentence is how did it feel, or what did it feel like to do it? And so the first one describes what you did, and the second one is how did it feel? And you do that. If you want to add another couple of sentences, that's just fine. But at least you're going to have 3 imprints. And don't worry if you did 15 things right. Just pick 3. And probably the first 3 that pops into your head is probably the right ones. And that's one tip. The second one is that in addition to a journal that you keep at the end of every practice or tournament competition day, some of my advanced students have started keeping voice memos.
Mm.
And voice memos are extremely powerful. And the way you do a voice memo is at the end of the day in shooting, if you're using a smartphone, whether it's an Android device or an iPhone or whatever it is, if you, it probably has a voice recorder on it, an app, a voice recorder app, or certainly you can get one if it doesn't have. And you want to hit that recorder and speak into it and say something like, well, today was this date, and what is it? Was it training, or was it the first day of a competition? Whatever, it's kind of describe what the day is and what the event title is. And then you're going to answer 3 questions. What I did well today was, and then give about a minute to 2 minutes of first things that pop into your head. And you can't do this wrong. You just, whatever pops into your head, what I did today was. And then the next one is what I learned today is. And you get an opportunity to correct your non-hits or your bad runs or your mistakes. What I learned today was I need to do something to correct that. So you're rehearsing your solution. And every time you rehearse a solution, self-image grows. Every time you rehearse problems, self-image shrinks. So you want to rehearse the solution. What I need to do this. And then the third thing is what I'm going to do about it is. And I'm going to increase my training and this, or I'm going to remember, I'm going to beef up my strategy to include this in my preset or whatever it is that you use to get ready for a stage of competition. And you're going to remember this because you did this voice memo. Now, at the end of the voice memo, there's a share button, and you hit the share button, and you can put your uh, email address. And I asked them if they wouldn't mind putting my email address in there as well. And then I got a student at a tournament, and it's a 3-day tournament. And at the end of the first day, I get to listen to them talk about that tournament, what they did well, what they learned, and what they're going to do about it. And and it makes me easier for me to coach them and to help them when we have a conversation and unpack that tournament. And if and most of us are self-coached, and that's a great asset. Voice memos have been a great asset. And I didn't come up with that. One of my students came up with that. Ben Crane taught me that. And I've been stealing that and using it with shotgun shooters and golfers and archers and all kinds of folks. Um, and it's a great tool. Voice memos. You should make sure that you're not using it to replace um, the performance journal.
Mhm.
It's best used in addition to the performance journal.
So, what I find is that when people discover the power of positive imprints, it takes me a while to convince them of it. So, I start with external imprints from me, telling them what they're doing well or the correction that they need to make. And then I get them doing it themselves, and they kind of get addicted to it. And it's so much fun to see the change from I screwed this up, I screwed that up, to wow, I met the standard and I'm shooting great. Because
Yeah,
I tell people you can never be a great shooter until you allow yourself to do great things and acknowledge that you're doing great things. It's really amazing. Now, what do you think about so the voice memo, that's new. So I'm going to write in my journal today. Today I learned from Lanny Bassham how to do voice memos, which is great. The young kids are going to love that. How do
mm,
you feel about typing your journal into a device versus handwriting?
well, there's some studies out there. I don't look for studies. I get sent studies by my clients.
Me too.
Somebody sent me a study that actually uh, said that when you write out something in your or print out something in your handwriting, it imprints stronger than if you type it up. Because a typed sentence, when you look at it, anybody could have written that. But when you read your handwriting, nobody writes like you do. If you can read your own handwriting. You know,
Right. Right.
but that I think that it's worth doing to write out your journal or print out your journal in your handwriting.
Mhm.
I think it's more effective than if you were to type it out. And you may type faster than you can write. My daughter can type with her thumbs faster than I can type on a typewriter, and she can type out an email on her phone and talk and carry on a conversation. I don't know how she does that, but she can. And but I can't do it. And but I think that it's worthwhile to re have it recorded in your hand and in your own hand. And
Oh,
I'm so convinced of this that I have resisted producing a digital version of the performance journal.
Mhm.
I just don't think it's going to be as effective.
Well, I was leafing through mine, looking at my handwriting, and the only other person that could have written this would have been my dad, because I adopted his handwriting. But this writing cannot belong to anybody on the planet but Steve Anderson.
Uh,
So what that means is there is no doubt that Steve Anderson did these things and therefore can do these things.
mhm.
It's so powerful. Plus, I can underline it 17 times if I want to. I can't do that if I'm using a device. I can put 17 exclamation points and make the bottom of the exclamation point a smiley face, right? And that brings me to my next question. Okay. I have two kinds of clients, and I'm sure you may not have two. You might. So I have one kind of client that wants to shoot well and finish well. I have another kind who only cares about winning. Do you have both kinds of clients?
Well, it depends on how you define winning. The two common ways to define winning is there's only one winner.
Mhm.
And if that's the only thing that's the only situation that meets your definition of winning, uh, you're limited to the number of times that you can win based on how many tournaments you go to. And but there are other ways that you can win. Uh, the my definition of winning is any time a person performs at the top level of their potential. And the potential is different for people. You know, if you've got a child that rarely ever gets anything other than an A, uh, and it's an outlier for them to get a B or a C. Uh, or you got another child that rarely ever gets an A. To them, 1A is winning. Or maybe a B is winning. It depends on who they are. Uh,
Mhm.
and so the potential varies and people varies by experience, by age, by equipment. Um, if and it's there's more than one winner in a tournament. If you say that when you reach the top level of your potential, um, you win. You open up the number of opportunities for you to win. And you're pretty restricted if you have to win the tournament to win.
Yeah, and so what I do with my clients who define winning as winning the tournament, because our sport has different classes, so you can win your class, you can win your division. So there's an opportunity at our big matches. There could be 15, maybe 20 winners by the time we go through all the categories.
Yeah, yeah,
But what I have them do, because see, they get the idea that mental management will not allow them to think about the result, but they want to think about the result. So what I do is I have them write in the journal the things that they can control that make the result that they want more likely, right? So today, my draws were fast, precise, and smooth because of my mental process. These are the performances that will help me win matches. So I think it's fine to tie what I'm doing well to the likelihood of winning. But sometimes people think that they're not supposed to think about the result. What do you think?
Well, I think it's really important that you think about the result,
Mm.
but it's when you think about it.
Mm-hmm.
You should think about, you have to think about the result in goal setting.
Mm-hmm.
Should think about the result in training because result is how you set goals, and the result is important in training. But it's it's harmful when you think about result in competition. I'm a firm believer in thinking about execution rather than result. And the reason why I say that is that anything that you can define, you can duplicate. And by thinking about your mental process, I believe that you can have mental consistency in tournaments, independent of the result. You can run a mental system and hitting all the gates in the mental system, and if those mental thoughts are synced up with your routine, with what you're physically doing, uh, you can, if you're focused on that, your mental game is a constant. But if your mental game is a function of outcome, outcome is always, score is always a variable. And you can never achieve mental consistency if your um, mental game is a function of a variable. And I believe that mental consistency promotes technical consistency. Technical consistency promotes fast, accurate results.
Mm-hmm.
And fast, accurate results moves you up on the leaderboard.
That's exactly right.
So you want to it's perfectly okay to think about outcome. As a matter of fact, we've got a section in our journal where what I did today and what I learned.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what I did today, that you're going to write the score down. You're going to write how many shots you shot or whatever, how many hours you took or whatever what you did today. And so, but just understand that thinking about score is not a bad thing as long as you do it at the right time.
Mm. That's really powerful because you're right. Training is a great time to think about winning, right? How long am I going to train? What am I going to do? And what I've begun telling people, because I had one athlete in particular who he takes everything so literally and then he puts his own spin on the literal translation. He literally thought he was not allowed to think about the goal he wanted and focus on the process. So what I encouraged him to do is take the goal that he wanted and tie it to the process he could control. So now, as you said, you got to think about winning at the right time. That's really powerful.
Well,
Now, I have a lot of people. In fact, this just happened today. What do you think about? And they tend to be type A people. They think that positive self-talk is for wimps. What do you think about that?
I think I think that that's probably the most immature thing I've ever heard.
Wow. Please expand on that.
Well, to start with, well, what are you thinking about then?
Well, in this case, they're thinking about mistakes and problems.
Yeah, well, you just improve the probability that you're going to have more mistakes and problems. And If you want more mistakes and problems, then then you're doing the right thing. You want to have better results and a better chance to win and get your goals. You darn sure better think positive. As a matter of fact, I've never met a champion that was a negative thinker.
Yeah, I think you find most of them in the middle of the pack.
Have you
And
have you ever try this? Try writing a book, The Power of Negative Thinking, and see how many it'll sell. Or how about this one? I'm depressed. I want you to know how I got how I got more depressed. I'm
Mm.
frustrated. This is the frustrated Bible. Frustrated Bible. It's for people who want to be more frustrated. Try to see how many copies of those you'll sell, and you'll be unique. I will say that. Broke.
That's
This
outstanding.
don't want people don't want to be frustrated. People don't want to be to not get better. Um, and if you the more you think about, talk about, write about something happening, the greater the probability that that thing will happen. Whatever you think about, that's what it becomes.
Mhm.
And,
And I have a handful of skeptics, and it's I love talking to skeptics about mental management because they think that I'm saying that they can just go sit in the corner, cross their legs, rub their fingers together, and become world champions. Nobody's saying that. The only thing self image can do is give you access to subconscious skill, right? No amount of self image is going to make me a champion tree trunk carver because I don't know anything about carving tree trunks into sculptures,
well,
right?
yeah, but the the first thing that we teach people is that performance is a function of three mental processes. It's not a function of one,
Mm-hmm.
not a function of two, it's a function of three: conscious, subconscious, self-image. And subconscious is skills. The problem that we see is that most people learn how to shoot the way I did. You think that performance is a function of skill, and you don't think at all about having a consistent mental thought pattern, which is conscious, or developing a self-image, which is your habits and attitudes. You just kind of throw those out, ignore those. And what you do is you're focusing on skill alone, and you'll get skilled, but you won't win because the people that are using all three are going to beat you every time. And I I didn't know anything about. I mean, my mental game uh, for all through high school and college was I thought about whatever popped into my head. My first shot always was one thing. I thought one thing. If I shot a couple of good shots, I thought something else. If I shot a couple of bad shots, I guarantee you I thought something else. And uh, when I had a good string going, I thought something else. When I have a bad string going, I thought something else. And there was no mental consistency to it at all. And so, but because I didn't have mental consistency, I didn't have technical consistency. When you change what you picture, your body changes. Your tempo changes, and that that can throw you out. in your sport a lot. If you slow down, or that's not a good thing.
No,
But
no. And what's really fascinating is I tell people that the two biggest problems in the sport are the conscious control of speed in competition, meaning if I go fast or slow down, I'm not getting access to subconscious skill. That's the biggest problem in the sport because I have to consciously choose how fast to do something or how slow to do it. That's not smart. The other problem, and this one might be number one, but negative imprints during training is such a massive problem in our sport because it's points divided by time. So I can have a fast performance with low points and be angry, or I can have a good points performance with a slow time and be angry. So the duality of the scoring means I can always be upset about something if I choose to. The flip side of that is, especially in training, I can always be happy about something if I choose to, right? So our sport, if golf was timed, where you had a number of strokes divided by how long it took you to shoot them, that's the sport we're in. So it's got this duality of scoring. It's very interesting.
well, what's really interesting is that you can make a mistake and your self-image grows.
Mm-hmm.
If immediately after you make a mistake, you think about, well, what's that teaching me? Now what do I need to do to fix that? Now you're thinking about the solution to that problem. And every time you think about the solution, your self-image grows. Every time you think about the problem, self-image shrinks. But what's interesting is I'm convinced that thinking about the solution is a stronger imprint than thinking about a problem. They're not equal. Thinking about the solution is a stronger imprint than thinking about the problem. Now, if you think about the problem and beat yourself up, it's hard to think about the solution.
Right.
But if you make a mistake and your first thing that you say to yourself is, what do I need to do? What do I need to do about it? Uh, you know, you're you don't think about the other things that happen to you in your life. When you make a mistake and you're immediately uh, your conscious mind starts turning toward the solution to the problem. Uh, the mistake isn't a problem. The mistake is actually becomes a requirement to get better. You know, when making a mistake and learning from it is a requirement to get better. We're going to make mistakes. We're going to make mistakes um, because perfection is hard to attain. And so what you want to do is to learn from your mistakes. Matter of fact, the most important thing that a young shooter can learn, that a new shooter, or it doesn't have to be a youth, when people take up our sport as adults. And I said the most important thing you need to know about the mental game is how to respond to what you do, because that's if you can learn how to respond and not react. So you already know how to react. You knew how to react when you entered this world, when when everything was a baby, when everything is going their way and they got plenty to eat and they got a clean diaper, they're happy. But if they don't get fed on time and they've got a soiled diaper, they let you know about it. They have no problem. You didn't have to be taught by mama to react. But sometimes people, it takes a little bit of maturity to learn how to respond. And responding is when you say, well, what do I need to do about that? What's the solution to this issue? I don't like that, so what's the solution? And
Right.
and when you learn that, you you're never afraid to make a mistake. You don't go out there trying to make a mistake, but when you make one, it doesn't freak you out. You just simply think, okay, what's the solution here?
Hmm.
Sometimes you go into tournaments and you don't score very well, but you learn a lot. Well, that may be more important than how you finish on the leaderboard.
Right. It's so funny that you brought that up because when I got back into competition into Steel Challenge, um, I was terrified, and I felt like my entire career was on the line just at this local shoot, right? Because here's Steve Anderson. I invented the modern dry fire method. I teach the mental game, and I was scared to death. But I know that pressure is going to amplify whatever I'm thinking and feeling. So I made a decision. Hey, I'm going to put my dot in the middle of every plate, and that's the best I can do. And the interesting thing is, I won that match. And the only thing I learned was that putting the dot in the middle of the plate gives me a good score. The second match I went to, I came in second at 97%. And I learned so much more. In fact, the guy that beat me, I actually helped him beat me by giving him mental game advice after the first stage, right? But even then, Lanny, I learned so much at 97% compared to what I learned at 100%. And I am so grateful for that opportunity because if I'd won that second match, I would not have learned near as much as I learned this way.
Yeah.
So you're of course you're 100% correct.
Yeah. And sometimes I'll ask my clients, I said, you want to win? They say, yes. I said, you want to win all the time? They say, yes. I said, what if you did? What if you won all the time? How many wins in a row would it take for you to start cutting corners in your training?
Oh, right.
How many wins in a row would it take for it? See, that one of the reasons why winning is so sweet is because we rarely do it. But if we did it all the time, it's kind of like, I like Chick-fil-A, but I don't want to eat it every daggone meal,
Mhm.
you know? And so we you I'm not saying that you it's good to have a performance that you learn a little bit and everything goes well. That's a great performance. But uh, you know, I I I was a competitor for a long time and a coach a lot longer, and I'm still learning stuff.
Mhm.
There's there's just uh, uh, there's just too much out there to know that you don't ever get bored if you if you're looking for solutions. The solutions are out there, and problems can tend to come in different varieties all the time. And so you have to come up with a way to not let that derail you and to learn from that experience and not have it frustrate you.
Right. And learning to see opportunities instead of obstacles. We went through, well, our sport has gone through several ammunition shortages. We've been through primer shortages. And my best shooters are the ones that say good. That means I don't have to load bullets. I can spend more time dry firing. So they see that as an opportunity where other people will quit. It's really fascinating. And once you make that shift, like I said earlier, you can get addicted to positive imprints. Do you think there's such a thing as too many as long as they're genuine?
No, I don't think there's a I don't think there's too many positive imprints. I think that bring it on. I'd like to have all. If you're not using all yours, give them to me.
Now, so you explained self-image very well. Could you draw a distinction here near the end of our time? I meet so many people who think that self-image is ego. How is ego different than self-image?
Well, if you there are different versions of what people think is ego, and if you there's the one version is arrogance.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so there's a difference between arrogance and confidence.
And didn't you say one time that you'd rather be a cocky winner than a humble loser?
Well, Wigger said that.
Okay. Oh, so that wasn't okay. So I need to.
Wigger said that. Wigger said a bunch of good things. He said good losers usually do. No. I asked him, I said, how do you read the wind? I said, Give me your secrets and how to read the wind." He says, well, okay, okay. He says, shoot at the right time.
Mhm.
That's all he said. Shoot at the right time.
Now
And
tell us about your first match in the snow because I love that story because you created a temporary imprint to self-image that got you through an immediate task, and I love that. So tell us about that.
well, it was a tournament in Switzerland, and it was August, and I didn't think August. I mean, I'm a Texas boy training in Georgia, and August means you're going to sweat up a storm. But we were at about 10,000 feet in the rain in Switzerland, and it was August, but it was snowing. And it was snowing so bad that you couldn't see. We're shooting 300 meters, and the wind, the snow was so bad that I thought they were going to call the tournament because you couldn't see the targets. And the Swiss don't stop anything. The tournament's supposed to start at 9 o'clock, and boy, they started at 9 o'clock. You couldn't see the targets. And I was shooting next to Erwin Vogt, who was the Swiss national champion, and he aimed at the target. We were shooting standing stage, and he shot, and I couldn't see what the heck is he seeing. And after a couple of shots, I saw that for a short period of time, it kind of cleared up to where he could kind of see the target, and he would shoot during that time. I couldn't see what he was keying on, but I just decided that well, if I don't shoot, he's going to have more holes in the paper than anybody else. He's going to win the world championships because he just shot more shots. I decided, well, I don't know what he's keying on, but I can key on him.
Mm-hmm.
Put up his gun, I put my gun up. And I shot really close to when he shot. And after a while, it cleared up, and we were able to continue. But I just remember telling myself, I said, I'm the best snow shooter, and for a Texas boy who trains in Georgia, that you've ever seen. And I got a solution here. My plan B, it's going to work. And that's the story.
Well, and what's so great about that is, so a lot of times people think that when we talk to self-image, we're supposed to lie to it. And I counter that with self-image will not accept a lie, but it can be stretched a little bit. So if you had said, I'm the best snow shooter in the world, self-image might have rejected that. However, you said, I'm the best snow shooter from Georgia and Texas that's on this range today,
Right. That's right.
because self-image can handle that stretch.
Yeah, I remember Earl Pullum, my coach, who's in the Hall of Fame as coach, uh, told me one time, he says, reality doesn't matter. Your perception of reality matters.
Mhm.
In other words, he was talking to me about the fact that I was intimidated by my teammates at having all these medals and more experience than I had and all that kind of stuff. And he said he's he he told me, he says, you can't be intimidated by those guys. And I said, well, yeah, but that's who, they're the best in the world. And he says, yeah. He says, so, well, there's a way to fix that. And I thought, well, I would appreciate it if you tell me how to do it. And he says, well, close your eyes. And he says, is it possible that sometime in the future, maybe 1,000 years from now, you could be beating them all the time? And I said, well, anything's possible. He says, well, okay. He says, uh, transport yourself to that time in history when you're beating them all the time and they walk on a range. What are you thinking now? I said, I'm thinking they got a problem and it's me. He says, you got to start thinking like that right now. And he says, uh, reality's not important. Your perception of reality is important.
Yeah.
So there are times when you can call that lying to yourself if you want to, but the imprint's the same.
Right.
You know, if you're imprinting at some future time, you're not lying to yourself. You're saying, is it possible that you could win at some point? Well, let's imprint that. Now, it's improbable that you're going to win today, and you can't go back and uh, and redo something that happened in the past. But it is possible that you can imprint something that could happen in the future, and that's what that's what Pullum was getting me at. So I think you're right about lying to yourself. It's kind of like praising somebody who's not worthy of praise.
Hmm.
That's not a good idea. And it's not a good idea to praise yourself when you're not worthy of praise.
Right.
But I think most people don't praise themselves enough.
Hmm. And how should the other thing that happened? Oh, you're gonna love this story, and we'll get to the question. So I was in Mississippi to teach a class on the range, and I met this guy named Bill Jackson. And Bill Jackson said to me, Steve, I am so glad you're here because I am terrible at one-handed shooting. I am terrible at movement. My accuracy is no good, and I'm slow. And I'm listening to this, pondering my response. And the guy next to him says, what he neglected to tell you is that he is the current open national senior champion. And I said, Mr. Jackson, in the future, I'm going to need you to proceed all of your complaints about your skill with the preamble, I am the current national champion. And he says to me, well, when you say it like that, it sounds kind of silly.
Yeah.
Because he can't suck at anything. He's a national champion. Now, somebody like that, how should they look at the improvements they need to make? So we need to acknowledge where we are, but we still know there's more. What do you think is the right way for that athlete to think about the improvements they need to make?
Well, he's not going to stay national champion very long because um, people that are going to imprint the way we've been talking about is going to take his title away from him. Uh, I I just don't know anybody that is negative that's dominant.
I don't either. And what's really interesting is the people in our sport that are negative, that we find them in the middle of the pack. They've worked really hard to get to the middle of the pack, but they're behaving and thinking differently than the guys at the top.
Yep. And no, we about arrogance now. I know some arrogant champions, but
Mm-hmm.
you don't have to be arrogant to be a champion. I know some humble champions. Uh, but as people asked me one time, it says, "Well, aren't all champions arrogant?" And I said, "Well, I know I know some arrogant champions, and they kind of brag on themselves all the time, and uh, but the percentage of arrogant champions is about the same at the top of the game than it is at the bottom of the game,
Mm-hmm.
middle of the game. The percentage is about the same. There are people that are just uh, arrogant. It doesn't really uh, correlate with they're more arrogant champions. There's a big difference between being confident and arrogant. You can be confident without being arrogant, for sure. And
Right.
you can be a humble champion. As a matter of fact, humble champions are well liked by everybody.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but um,
Yeah, I describe it like this. Whenever this subject comes up, I say, I believe that I am one of the best practical shooting coaches on the planet. And I'm extremely confident that I'm going to deliver the best class ever every time. Now, arrogance and ego would be I am so good that I am not going to work with a new shooter because they're not worth my time. And I am never the most important person on the range. Now, I might be the most knowledgeable in solving these issues and getting these improvements, but I'm never the most important, right? And I think that's the difference between ego and self-image.
yeah, I think that I think I brought this out in one of my books. I said, there's a secret to getting anything you want. You can make anybody do anything you want them to do. All you have to do is remember this one rule: is to get what you want, first you have to give them what they want,
Mm-hmm.
and then you can control them.
Mm-hmm. And that doesn't need to be malicious because that sounds kind of malicious and manipulative, but it's
But
not.
if you want an A in school, what does the teacher want? Teacher wants a respectful, diligent, hardworking uh, student that does the work and is nice to her or him, and they go out of their way to give you an
Mm-hmm.
A. And what does an employer want? An employer wants a hardworking, knowledgeable, on time, well dressed, respectful employee that does his job, and they'll give you a check and fire everybody else and keep you. You
Yeah.
know, what does a parent want? I'll tell you what a parent doesn't want. They don't want a disrespectful and entitlement uh, person who lies to them and doesn't respect them. And so, I mean, I respected my father because he told me, he said, when he said to me, if you ever disrespect your mother, he let me do it one time. And he says, if you ever disrespect your mother again, you're gonna feel my wrath. And I didn't know, I didn't even want to know what that meant, but I knew that he would do it. And I never disrespected my mother, and I didn't disrespect her much. I just probably, she told me to do something and I said, in a minute, or something like that, like not, whatever, it was, it was, it was but he came off a chair and he came to me, and I mean, I was up against the wall real quick.
Mhm.
But, I think that, you he and sometimes he would give me, a guilt trip, and that hurt more than the spanking did.
Mhm.
And, so, well, I gotta get rolling here.
Okay, Lanny, thank you so much for your time. We need to have a private conversation off the air, so I'll go ahead and sign off on the recording.
All right.
I just want to tell everybody thank you so much, Lanny, from the bottom of my heart. And if you're interested in mental management classes from andersonshooting.com, we do run them every month, and you can find them at andersonshooting.com and click on upcoming classes, where I get the privilege and the joy, Lanny, of spreading your life's work and improving lives. So thank you so much from the bottom of my heart.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Take care.